listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion for the sake of the world. This delusion, it's gotta go.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Atheist Experience. I'm your host, Matt Dillahunty. Joining me this week, Jeff D.
Hi folks.
And for those of you who aren't actually watching the program, if you're listening to the podcast, yes, in fact, I am here in drag, looking way better than you thought I was going to, I must say. Quick notes, I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, but we'll get the usual announcements out of the way. This is a live call-in program. We'll have the number up for you shortly. It's sponsored by the Atheist Community of Austin, a nonprofit educational organization promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. And the ACA has weekly meetings every Sunday at Romeo's on Barton Springs Road, except for the first Sunday of the month when we host a lecture series at the Austin History Center located at 9th and Guadalupe. You can find out more about the ACA at www.atheist-community.org. In addition to this program, the ACA also sponsors a bi-weekly it's a weekly that's looking kind of bi-weekly internet audio podcast called The Nonprofits, and you can go to nonprofitsradio.com for more information. We've had studio problems the last 2 weeks. We are expecting to have a show this coming Saturday, but not the Saturday after that, as I will be in Oklahoma for the Oklahoma Free Thought Convention, and we'll get more information about that next week as well. After this program is over, any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to join us at El Arroyo for dinner, drinks, or conversation, whatever. You do not have to be a member to attend any of our events, as long as you're atheist-friendly and not coming down to preach, proselytize, or provoke. Please come on down. If you don't get through on the telephone today, or if you don't want to, you can email tv@atheist-community.org, and that gets to myself, the co-host, some of the people behind the scenes. We cannot possibly answer all the emails that come in, but we do try to read all of them. And if you put AETV or NPR in the subject line, that will make it through almost everybody's spam filters, I believe. So why am I sitting here looking fabulous?
I don't know, Matt. Last time I was on the show, you had just had an operation.
That's incidental.
That's not it? Okay.
There was a competition, for those who don't know the backstory. I'll get to it real quick. There was a competition to raise money for Camp Quest, a secular summer camp for kids. And there were several bloggers and individuals like myself who joined together to try to raise more money for Camp Quest than P.Z. Myers of Pharyngula fame. And he agreed to, if he won, to shave off his beard. And so we agreed to do all sorts of other things if we won. And as you may have guessed, we won. We raised about $30,000 between the two groups to send kids to summer camp. For $30,000, I'll dress up like pretty much anything you want me to. But I made a blog post yesterday that kind of summed up the process that I went through, what all we did, how I didn't cut corners, and where I had to cut corners. You can visit the blog at atheistexperience.blogspot.com, and there's a post up yesterday kind of explaining everything that went down, and that it was a very fun and educational process. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this because it really doesn't have that much to do with atheism of the show, apart from that we raised money for this. But it was an educational experience. It gave me a little insight into what women go through. It gave me some insight into what people with gender identity issues go through, cross-dressers, transsexuals, transgendered individuals, the process of trying to shop when clothes simply don't fit, as well as the reaction of people that you run into. I mean, just when it was just me with painted fingernails Saturday afternoon, the reactions from people was very enlightening. And also my own response to their reaction taught me a lot too, because do I sit there and just, shrug it off as you can think whatever you can think, or do I back out and say, oh, no, I really don't do this. I'm doing a drag show because we raised money. And I have to admit, I did both at different times. So I kind of learned a little bit about what I am and am not comfortable with. And it gave me a little taste of what some other people go through. I think that it's a good exercise to kind of realize that people don't always fit into easy boxes. And it doesn't matter what the labels are that you try to put on people. Sometimes somebody will fit. A lot of times it's a lot more broad of an experience than that. And so we had gay and straight, and then we added bi. Well, that doesn't cover the full gamut either. And human sexuality may be this broad spectrum that defies actual labels. But the important thing that I wanted to address today is, as we try to go through and have a pretty normal show, is the merits of an argument are entirely dependent on the argument itself. Who says it, what their credentials are, what they're wearing, what their sex life is, whether or not you like the way they look, whether or not it's weird, doesn't matter. Arguments stand and fall on their own merits, and it doesn't matter whether it's coming from somebody in drag or from somebody on a podium or at a pulpit. Have to evaluate the arguments strictly on their own merits and set everything else aside, and that's not always easy. We are a prejudicial, bigoted bunch. And we extend our fears across the board. Some things are very discomforting to people. Watching same-sex couples kiss is discomforting to some people. Seeing a man in drag is discomforting for other people. But becoming aware of that and seeing it more often and realizing that these are people, and that's the critical aspect, that we are all people, is a good way to kind of broaden your horizons, raise your consciousness, as Dawkins has been promoting, and maybe we can get to the point where we stop trying to put everybody in little boxes and stop worrying about things that don't matter, because what I'm wearing has absolutely no bearing on what I'm going to say for the rest of the show. And that's all I have to say about that. What do you got, Jeff?
I've got nothing to say about that. As far as I'm concerned, the way people dress, rules about how people are supposed to dress are pretty much completely made up, stupid traditions.
Yeah.
And I don't care.
Yeah, it's like what makes
I just don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me. I can have issues with being deceived, right? That's potentially an issue when it comes to cross-dressing. But then it wouldn't be a problem if our society didn't have these artificial, made-up bullshit rules about how the different genders are supposed to dress in the first place.
What
to
makes
me, it's
this
a big distraction,
female?
big waste of time. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care
what makes the dress
dressed.
I'm wearing women's clothing? I mean, just the fact that we decided it was.
You can find countries around the world where men will wear pretty much any of the various things you've got on.
Yeah. And good for them. Hey, we got a full line of callers and an hour-long show, so I'm not going to waste a whole bunch more time talking about this.
Yay.
Let's go ahead and get right on to calls. William in Bolivia, how are you? Or Bolivia, North Carolina.
Hey, man, pretty good. How about you?
We're doing well.
Hi, William.
Okay. My question is, how close are atheism and humanism? And I guess before you answer that question, I kind of want to get an agreed-upon definition of humanism. The belief that human beings should be first priority over dogma, be it religious, political, or any traditional or any other ideological dogma.
Okay.
So how close are those two related?
Is that a fair definition of humanism? My understanding is that there are religious, and I don't mean just atheists gathering and calling their humanist gathering a church. But my understanding is that there are actually Christian humanists. Is that not so?
Aren't there very? Why I wanted to. I mean, that probably is so. That's kind of one reason why I want to get a definition, because there are various ones, and I guess if you got a better definition, kind of.
Well, I guess we could stick with atheism and secular humanism as opposed to religious humanism.
Yeah, if we're talking secular humanism, then your definition was correct.
Okay, so how close are those two linked?
Not.
There's no necessary link. Like, well, I would suppose if you're a secular humanist,
right,
you would be an atheist by. Well,
you could believe there's a God, but then you could call yourself a secular humanist. If you're like various deists, could be secular humanists, right? Couldn't they?
Sure.
Thinking that God, there's a God, but he's not where we turn to determine how we should treat each other. We worry about ourselves, right? Those are humanists, yet they believe in a God. So those are theistic humanists.
Yeah. So they're not necessarily tied together. Now, having said that. A great many of the atheists that I deal with who are atheists for skeptical reasons, they're intellectual atheists, etc., they're also secular humanists. They may not necessarily agree with every tenet of the secular humanist manifesto, and they may not join secular humanist groups, but they tend to identify along the same lines. So in practice, what you find in atheist groups is a really good correlation or overlapping of the groups, but there's no requirement that one be both.
And I think the reason why you find that overlap is because atheism doesn't tell you anything about how we should deal with one another. So atheists looking around for guidance as to how to comport themselves will latch onto things like secular humanism, because that is a viewpoint on that subject. That atheism just doesn't say anything about that. All it says is we don't believe there's any gods.
Right. That makes some sense. I mean, I knew I was kind of being a little generalized, but for the most part, I do kind of see it, and I guess that kind of does answer it.
Okay.
I guess one more thing before I go is, are there any issues that maybe a secular humanist might speak out against that aren't religiously tied one way or another as a rule?
I don't understand your question.
Well, I mean, because most of the issues y'all speak out are religiously based, because, I mean, it does do damage, you know, the anti-gay, yada, yada, but there are a few that religion has nothing to do one way or another. Do you ever, like, speak out and call bullshit flag to that? I don't know if I can cuss. I'm sorry
Sure.
if I can't. But.
Sure. I will call bullshit anywhere where it's deserved. It doesn't matter to me whether or not a religion or some religion or all religions have a position on it. I'm not just, oh, look, here's a position that some religious group has or that we would consider religious, so let's rail against it. I'm more about, as an atheist, skeptic, critical thinking, secular humanist, rationalist, I'm a fan of just, let's solve these issues, let's address these issues no matter what. And in that vein, I can work right alongside of religious people who agree. There are plenty of religious people, for example, who support church-state separation, even though there are other religious people who don't. It doesn't matter to me if every church and every organized religion suddenly came down in favor of church-state separation. Whatever non-religious group that was left that was against it is simply wrong, and they deserve to be challenged on that.
Okay.
Cool.
That's good. Well,
thanks.
I guess you got out of the call, so I'll let you go. Appreciate your time.
Sure. Thanks for calling, William. Appreciate
All right.
it.
Bye, William.
No problem. Bye.
We've got Tommy in L.A. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, Tommy.
Hi, I have 2 points I want to make. First of all, I disagree with you about gender roles, and second of all, what do you think about the belief in God being a behavior of immune system, just like disgust of gay men is also a behavior of immune system?
Hey.
Can you do the question part again real quick?
And control room, the volume is kind of low.
Yeah.
We're having trouble hearing the caller.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, try it again.
Yeah, my point is, I believe that gender roles should be respected and valued because most likely they evolved to benefit our offspring, you know, and the behavior immune system, the belief in God could actually be a behavior immune system, just like the disgust of gay men is a behavior immune system. This is Charlie, by the way.
Hey, this is Checkham Charlie?
Yeah.
Yeah, bye. Okay. Thanks, though. Thanks for calling in as Tommy, you batshit crazy liar. Yeah, I don't care what your views on gender roles are, but with regard to God as a possibly evolutionary belief or a belief that has some value, his actual claim was along the lines of that having a particular God belief might protect you from more harmful beliefs.
And in response to the idea that anything that evolved should therefore be something that we just automatically accept and don't question.
Yeah.
Evolution happens over very long periods of time, And the long period of time over which those gender roles you're talking about evolved, even assuming that there's any validity to the idea that gender roles are an evolved trait, which I think it's a lot less clear than that. But even if that was the case, we don't live the way that people lived over the last several million years, and the idea that we should just, close our eyes and accept whatever evolution is foisted on us without thinking about it, without being willing to move on from that if we have a better, fairer, more just way of doing things is ridiculous.
Yeah, it's typically referred to as the naturalistic fallacy, that because something is natural, it is somehow right. And what you're doing in that case is you are taking the natural world, the process of evolution, which is mindless, without intent, that is just casting about in whatever the reality happens to be, and you are infusing it with some intent and purpose and a goal, and then declaring that goal is good, as if my 5 fingers, that's the way nature intended me to be. So there's something wrong if a mutant is born with 6 fingers, even if it turns out to be more beneficial. I don't know, maybe they can play the piano better.
Right. Not to mention the fact that if it weren't for those kinds of variations, we wouldn't have evolution in the first place.
Yeah, it's just absurd. Michael from North Bergen, New Jersey.
Oh my God, I'm a huge fan of you guys. What's up?
How you doing?
Good, man. I've been watching your show almost every week.
Cool.
Yeah, so basically I just wanted to call in and ask you guys, where you guys stand on free will?
Are we going to get into a long thing about this? I think there is a thing that it's fair to call free will. And I am what they call a compatibilist. That is to say, I accept that the universe is basically deterministic, but I think within the bounds of determinism, there are things you can point at and reasonably refer to them as free will.
I mean, the way I define free will is like choice over opinion and thought. And actions, voluntary actions, are derived from thought and opinion. So, I mean, do you really think that you have control over your own thoughts and opinions?
I think in order to say you don't have control over your thoughts and opinions, you have to ignore meaningful distinctions between, like, yourself and the rest of the universe.
In my view, is a little bit different. Once you get to your particular definition of free will, I don't think that necessarily exists, and I think the scientific information is starting to show that it doesn't, that decisions are essentially made before we're consciously aware of them, and therefore, while it's still a part of us, it's not a part of any process that we would identify with the kind of choice you're talking about. Although I do agree with Jeff, I'm also a compatibilist with respect to specific definitions, in that the types of things that we would count and qualify as free will exist. They may still be at their core illusions, but I don't think that matters much for any conversation that we really care about free will, which is holding people responsible for their actions, and whether or not someone else is intentionally imposing and preventing somebody else from doing what it is that they quote-unquote will.
And as a compatibilist, I don't have the slightest difficulty with the discovery that we have choices that are made in our brains before the conscious part of our awareness becomes aware of them, because those are just different parts of my brain, and it's still my responsibility.
Yes.
So to me, that is a distinction without a difference. Further, I think that it is important not to let go of the term free will, because it is attached to notions of personal responsibility. And I think that it's a huge mistake. It's throwing the baby out with the bathwater if we say, well, free will doesn't turn out to be this magical nonsense that religionists tried to tell us it was, therefore it doesn't exist at all. Because the term still refers back to the question of, is a person responsible? Is it fair to hold a person responsible for the things that they did?
Yeah.
You guys are going in the direction of responsibility. I was just going in the direction of, do we really have choice over...
I understand, and that's why basically what you described was some version of libertarian free will. And, and I don't think that that sort of free will exists. So with your particular definition, no, I don't think so. But I completely agree with what Jeff just said, because we're talking about something that's different.
All right.
But anyway, there's an episode of the Nonprofits, if you dig through the archives, where we did a 3-hour show where we all sat around and debated free will with everybody ganging up on Dennis.
Yeah, and Dennis won because, from my perspective, I wasn't quite aware of just how far he was willing to go to defend his position. How far he was willing to stretch things, but that's not fair to Dennis. He's not here.
Yeah,
we should have a rematch.
But it's worth pointing out that Dennis has on the show actually agreed that he agrees with us on what's actually there.
Yeah.
It's whether or not he wants to label it that, which is another set.
And I think the label is hugely important.
Yeah, but thanks a lot for calling, Michael. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks. Take care.
All right. Is it Horica in Panama City?
It's Horica.
Horica, sorry.
It's like Eureka with the whore in front of it.
Sorry.
I'm a big fan of the show, and I want to add my fiance. She used to live with a drag queen, and you do okay in the drag queen world, man. You're pretty decent looking drag queen.
Thank you.
But the reason I called is I want to share a story with you guys on the dangers of even moderate theism. I was raised Greek Orthodox, and I quickly became, when I went to college, I studied abroad in China, and I was challenged on my Christianity, and I quickly became a moderate theist. And I remained a moderate theist throughout college, and I graduated in the spring of 2010, and I speak fluent Portuguese. So I decided, I absolutely love Brazil. I traveled once there before, and I decided to, since the job market was shit, I decided that I would go ahead and teach English in Brazil. I'd never taught English before. So what I did was I found a program in Rio de Janeiro to teach teachers how to teach English. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I bought a plane ticket and I paid the tuition, and I went over to Rio, and it was absolutely amazing. I was basically in heaven for me. The women were beautiful. I loved the language. I loved Brazil. I was in my element. I was really excited to be there. So once the course got started, I was also really excited because after 4 years of theory in college, I'd learned something, but it was all faceless. So finally, when I got to this course, I was really excited because I finally had an opportunity to use what I've learned. Okay, so I was really excited, and so basically I didn't sleep for 5 days. I was so excited. And after 5 days of no sleep, you can get a little loopy. Mm-hmm. And I was a little delusional. At this point, I was a moderate theist. I thought there was a God out there, but I never really questioned it too much. But I believed in God. I wasn't really religious growing up, but I thought there was a God out there. So at this point, I am loopy. At 5 days of no sleep, I am delusional. I am saying things. And I was in a new country. I just moved to Brazil. And the ideas that I got in my head, I thought that I was the Messiah, okay? If you know anything about Rio, there's this huge statue. It's called Cristo. It's a big statue of Jesus on top of this mountain that you can see everywhere in the city. So basically, I thought that I was the Messiah. There's all these signs, and my two best friends are both Catholic, and my Portuguese is very good. I look kind of Brazilian. So for me, I was, in my delusional mind, I was thinking I was raised to be the Messiah. And, for 5 days no sleep, it made sense to me. I'm supposed to save these people, and it just made sense to me in a perverted kind of way. So the next day, I managed to get maybe about 45 minutes of sleep. The next day, and this is a scare. I never told my mother this because I'm 23, by the way. I never told my mother this because, bless her heart, it would freak her out. this crazy idea came to me that for God was speaking to me at this point. I was having psychological problems. God was speaking to me, and He told me that to prove my faith. And just imagine, 5 days before this, I was an intelligent, moderate theist. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
God told me that to prove my faith to Him, and I get emotional when I think about it. God told me that I have to kill myself to prove my faith to Him. So the next day, I went out, and Rio de Janeiro. If you know anything about Rio, it's famous for its favelas, which are like slums, gangs, and drugs. It's famous for it. It's a huge city. I was wandering off into the city. Before my host mother got up, I left. I took off my shirt. I took off my shoes. I threw away my wallet, my keys. I didn't need that. And I was pacing across in front of the street. I was ready to jump in front of a busy street, to jump in front of a bus, to kill myself with God. Luckily, I was so manic and so deranged that I got busy. I was trying to break into a police station. I mean, the memory now is so distant, and there are bits and pieces that I don't remember. But to make a long story short, I tried to break into a police station, and these firefighters, they came, and I remember they put a gun to my head, and they realized that I was delusional, and they put me in a hospital, and they drugged me, and I was there for 5 days. And eventually, I was paranoid, and in this period of time, I remember bits and pieces, but I turned into Tim Tebow, I turned into Jesus, I turned into the Hulk. I was delusional, okay? And eventually, they gave me medication, and eventually, I was very paranoid, I was seeing demons, and eventually, I told them who I was, and I remembered the address of my host mother, and then she came, and after 5 days, my family thought I was dead, because they hadn't heard from me. Eventually she came, and I came to my senses, and they gave me medication, and I was medicated, and I was able to control my thoughts. And even though I'm now manic because of the situation, I have medication to control my thoughts. But ever since then, I came, my mother flew over. She's a pharmacist in the Air Force. She flew over once she found out where I was. She flew over to make sure I was okay. And they flew me back to the United States.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm really glad that you're okay and everything. I do have a concern though about, I mean, we're talking about conditions. I certainly see how religion, and in particular even moderate religion, can play into this scenario.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a scenario where somebody's simply not in their right mind, that they're probably, perhaps chemically imbalanced and need a medication, whatever.
Yeah.
So it could have happened to anybody, irrespective of what their religious beliefs were. I mean,
Yeah, but my point that I'm trying to make is that religion gave me the ideas to jump in front of that bus, and had I been in a normal situation, I wouldn't have had those ideas.
And see, I'm not sure that religion's what gave you the idea to jump in front of a bus, because I can't really find anything within Christianity that supports that idea.
Well,
so
the idea that
what we're talking about is somebody whose mental condition and their assessment of their religious beliefs leads to that. I mean, if you're gonna talk about what the cause is, you have to put it on both as contributing factors.
But what I'm saying is that the idea of a God, what I'm saying is the idea of that in my mind, the idea of a God planted that seed. So wherever that idea came from, it can be dangerous.
Sure.
That's my point.
Sure.
That is the point that I'm trying to make.
Probably easier to avoid not sleeping for 5 days than it is to avoid a religious upbringing.
That is true. There was a lot of factors involved, but the point that I'm trying to get at.
You also mentioned that you turned into the Hulk at one point, and
these were
we could be blaming Marvel Comics for that.
These were psychological conditions.
Yeah.
But my point that I'm trying to make is that religion, even moderate theism, can be dangerous, and these are points that Christopher Hitchens and Sam Harris make.
Sure,
that even moderate theism.
To be fair, though, the damage and the reason that many of us identify moderate and liberal beliefs as being dangerous doesn't really apply in this particular scenario, because, like Jeff was pointing out, you know, we could blame Marvel Comics for your delusions about the Hulk.
Yeah, but my point is that those weren't the ones that were making me want to jump in front of the bus.
I got.
And Charles Manson blamed the Beatles.
Uh-huh.
You know, when people are not in their right mind, we're in an awkward position here because you've put us in a corner where, to be fair, we feel that we have to defend religion from what you're saying.
Yeah.
And we're not big fans of religion by any stretch.
No, I understand. I understand your point, but.
I'd be more. You could have summed up the whole, danger in, say, believing that there's an afterlife that you could go to, right? By pointing out anybody that was more willing to die in any circumstances ever in the history of the world, more willing to die because they thought their soul was going to go somewhere. Now that's dangerous, and you can say it in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, I appreciate the call.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Love the show.
Sure.
Take care.
Bye-bye. We got Anthony in Los Angeles. How are you?
Hi guys.
Hey.
Hey, love your guys' show.
Thanks.
Actually, I'm calling because I'm an ex-Christian considering becoming an atheist, and I need.
Well, if you're an ex-Christian, what are you now?
I'm still in the middle, but
there is no. Well, all right. All right. Do you believe a God exists?
Some days I do, but some days I don't. It's like I'm very confused. But I'm very much considering becoming an atheist because, like, I don't really understand, nor do I really make sense of the Christian doctrine anymore.
Well,
because I don't understand it, and it's like a lot of what people tell me about God. God is love. God is, all these great things, yet all these bad things are happening in the world. You know, I just thought it was a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah. So, quickly, you don't actually... you talk about becoming an atheist in the sense that you're converting to something. That's not the case. You know, every one of those days where, like, you believed in a God, that day you were a theist, and on the days where you didn't, those days you were an atheist. I mean, that's all there is to it. Now, you can go, and by the way, it's not just a matter of atheist and Christianity. I mean, you know, if Christianity doesn't make sense to Jews and Buddhists and Muslims or Hindus, you know, obviously they're not accepting Christianity. So there's the idea of consciously rejecting the claims of various religions. But on every day that you've thought, you know, you've considered your beliefs and you're able to say to yourself, I don't believe there's a God, those are the days that you're an atheist.
Well, now it's more often that I'm feeling these, I guess, that I'm believing these things because, you know what, because I watch your show a lot, and those days where you just said, you know what, none of this makes sense, it's good to have, you know, evidence for your beliefs, and it really makes no sense to believe something without, you know, having sufficient evidence. I'm sort of on the same boat right there. I like to question a lot. I'm a big skeptic when it comes to, I mean, basing my life on something. I mean, if I were to base my life on something like a religion or God, I would at least like to have sufficient evidence, you know, in order for me to do so. I go to college, and you know, I joined a Christian organization there, but I really got, you know, I really noticed how that Christian organization works. It's where you have to pay, you know, in order to go on trips with them, and it was really it ran more like a business. It didn't run like, you know, like something that Jesus would teach. You know, like, just like much of Christianity now, it's based on books.
Sure, but that's all. I mean, I agree with you, but that's all irrelevant. I mean, the fact that there are Christian organizations out there that are scams. I'm sure you'll find atheist organizations out there that are scamming people. That's that's separate from the issue of whether or not the fundamental claims that that religion is making are true. And if you accept it, then you're a Christian, and if you don't, then you're not.
Do you have specific issues from Christianity that you're having trouble letting go of?
I guess the whole fear-based, because the whole fear-based thing about, like, well, if you don't believe in our religion, then you will go to hell.
Yeah.
That really messed it up for me.
I faced that one. Let me tell you what how I dealt with that. And I remember the moment. I'm walking down the street, right, and I'm feeling skeptical about the religion I was brought up with, and it occurred to me, and I was having trouble accepting the idea that stuff wasn't true because of the fear of offending this, you know, cosmic world-creating entity that supposedly loved me and gave me everything, right? That I felt guilty about it, and I felt fearful that I was going to be asking for trouble if I dropped a religion. And then I remembered how often I'd been told that God was fair, just, would never, you know, do anything to you that was unreasonable. And I realized that God, the God I'd been raised to believe, would never in a million years do harm to me just because I used the brain that I'd been told he gave me. And the moment that I realized that, I felt free to look at the actual facts without the fear. And 5 minutes later, I was calling myself an atheist.
And if that doesn't work for you, how much time have you spent worrying about being punished by the Hindu gods, or you know, do you worry about the fact that you're not a Jew or that you're not a Muslim? Are you sitting around in fear of the consequences of not believing in those gods?
Well, no, actually, I was actually watching Richard Dawkins, like event on YouTube where he was talking about, you know, like if you were to grow up in India, then you would believe in the Hindu god. If you were to grow up in Israel, you probably worship the Jewish god. So it's all based on where you're at, and based on how you grow up, how you're sort of indoctrinated, how you're socialized into a certain institution. That is going to basically dictate. Well, have a great, I'm not saying dictate, but have a great, profound influence on what you believe.
Sure, it's the reason why most of the time we end up talking about Christian concepts of God on this show, because we live in a culture that is predominantly Christian.
Yeah, yeah, and I've grown up, you know, in Catholic church. That's basically from the time I was a young kid to probably around the time, because I joined the military in 2003, and all throughout the whole military, I was probably Catholic. I read my Bible and everything, you know. Those times I was lonely, I'd missed home, you know, I used to read, you know, a couple verses that would, you know, bring me comfort or whatever. But I just found that, you know, even the military is really heavily Christian influenced at times, because I used to get, like, flyers and, you know, free Bibles and you know, those little Gideon Bible, you know, New Testament, and it was sort of like hinting, like, you know, like nudging me on the shoulder, like, you catch our drift, you know, like, this is what we want you to believe, you know. So that's the whole idea I got when I was in the military. Like, they were trying to push some kind of, you know, doctrine on me.
Sure.
And when I got out, you know, I basically felt like a lot of veterans when they got out, you know, like, you're transitioning to new society. Well, no society that you know, you left for 4 years, and then you're trying to get back in it, you know, you're trying to, you know, make sense of everything right now, you're trying to fit back in. And I found a church, you know, I tried to join, and I joined a Protestant church. Mm-hmm. And that Protestant church I found was a little shady, because preacher always used to talk about, you know, giving money, you know, you're giving to God. quote unquote. You're not giving. Yet he lived in this huge house, you know. And
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just having a hard time understanding, you know, what's left holding you back. The question that Jeff asked before, and you know, there's two options that have already been given here about how to deal with potential concerns about fears of consequences of not believing. I don't know what else to say on that front.
I think, I'm with Jeff there. You know, these are just irrational beliefs. I mean, I have no evidence that any of this stuff's going to happen. I have a good friend. He says, don't fear the unknown. Don't fear it. I mean, it really makes no sense to fear anything. I see life more as this, like you live and you die. Death is a natural part of life, you know, like you're not going to live forever. And I don't, you know, understand why most people are afraid of dying, because they feel as if, you know, this lifetime is sort of going to dictate where they're going to end up. But, you know, I just feel like it's irrational for me to believe these things. And I agree more with the atheists now. Like,
well, welcome to the club.
Yeah, I mean, there's no official ceremony or anything, but you know, the day you decide that you know you've given up on religion and you don't believe that stuff anymore, then you're an atheist, and welcome aboard.
Yeah, we got conventions and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you. But I'm just, you know, this is just a particular belief that I have. I was listening to this one atheist, and he was talking about, you know, don't label yourself anything. Atheism is just a certain non-belief that you have about a God, but you're you.
That's right.
First and foremost, you're Anthony, or you're Jeff, or you're Matt, and you should put yourself there first.
That's Matilda today, but
yeah, you should put your own what you like. You know, like I like a lot of things. I like to play music. I like all these different things, and a lot of what religion was doing was hindering a lot of my progress, because I was devoting my time to this image or this concept of God that I had in my mind.
See,
and I first and foremost.
I think there's usefulness in actually adopting some labels, because saying I'm an atheist doesn't put me in a little box where an atheist is the only thing I am. I'm a whole bunch of things, and there's a ton of different labels that apply. But running around saying, no, I don't want to identify with a particular label is potentially damaging, because what it does is it leaves the other atheists who are out there and who think they're the only ones, leaves them hanging. Whereas by coming out and saying, you know, yeah, I'm an atheist, so what? I'm also, you know, 20 other things that are 50,000 other things that I could possibly put labels on. It's just one of the many things. There's a value in adopting a label and running with it. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody should do it, or that you should necessarily adopt it as a definition of who you are. I mean, you are you. I'm in complete agreement. But trying to avoid labels for the sake of avoiding labels, if they fit, I think is a little dishonest. I mean, it would be like somebody saying, you know, you're bald. No, I'm not bald. Don't you label me. No, I am, in fact, bald. It's a label. It's one that I dig. You know, it's all right.
And I'm right now I'm in the closet with atheism, because, well, I've only told a few close people, like my mom and dad know that, you know, I don't believe in God anymore. My brother knows, and my little sister, but everyone else in my family, like my dad's side is huge, you know, really big on the Catholicism. They're really huge Catholics. And my mom's side is heavily Protestant Christian. But, you know, I don't believe in it anymore, and I just need advice on how to come out to people. Like, do you tell people, oh, I'm an atheist, or if the conversation comes up, just say, you know what, yeah, I am an atheist. I don't believe that any God exists. I like to base my beliefs on you know, rationality and logic and reasoning.
My only advice is, you know, find whatever is the comfort level that you like. You know, if you want to be really overt about it, get the atheist T-shirts and the atheist ball cap, and you know, and the atheist lunchbox and
The atheist tattoos.
and the atheist tattoos, right? do the whole thing if that's what you're comfortable with. If because of your situation you need to remain under the radar, then do that. I mean, there's in my opinion, it would be bad if nobody who was an atheist was open about it. But that's not the same as saying that everybody has a responsibility to make that their big, open, flagrant lifestyle. If you're not in that position, then don't. But it seems to me if you're comfortable enough to say it to your parents that you don't believe in God anymore,
Yeah.
then I mean that's the toughest one in my experience.
Yeah, I'd say you're pretty much out. I mean, you know, we've recommended a bunch of different things, and every situation is going to be different. One of the things that I've said over and over again for a lot of people is, you know, it's probably best not to make any big deal about it. Go about being who you are and just being honest. And eventually somebody's going to, you know, ask a question. They're going to say, hey, what's up with you? Don't you believe in God? And you can say, no. And by this time, it should have been. It was obviously evident enough for them to ask. So you know, you're not being dishonest by assuming that, you know, it was at least somewhat understood or irrelevant or none of their business. But in this case, you're already out to what sounds like most of your close family. Yeah, I'm not sure what there's left to do.
Yeah. So how did you guys leave your church? Because I'm pretty much involved in my church, but I'm thinking about leaving because, you know, I just.
Okay. You just don't go anymore. It really is that easy. You just don't have to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I give you permission to stop going to church.
Heck, we give everybody permission to stop going to church if they want.
And on that note, feel free to email us, but we got full lines, and I got to try and get some more calls before we get the show over with. But you can email tv@atheist-community.org, and we'll do what we can to get more information. But yes, you can stop going to church, my child.
And if you need people to hang out with, try meetup.com.
Yeah, there's really good sources
to see if you can find
internet.
some atheists.
Okay, hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Because for a lot of people, that's the hard part. It's not so much leaving the old group as being left with no group.
Yeah, finding anybody to associate with once you've dropped your entire, you know, social network can be very difficult.
Right.
Daniel in Denver, how are you?
Hi there,
Derek?
guys. I'm great. I just want to first start off by saying, Matt, you're looking mighty beautiful today.
Thank you.
Quick question I had because I haven't. Really
What's wrong with Jeff?
Yeah, what am I, chopped
he's
liver?
Okay, too.
Thank you.
I guess. No. Anyways, quick question I wanted to ask because I haven't really heard you guys talk about it much on the show is what's your kind of take so far on your, you know, Texas Governor Rick Perry trying to hold this prayer rally in Houston, and I wanted to know if the ACA, you know, might be speaking out against it, or if there might be anything else up exactly that they're trying to do.
We haven't got anything official, although some of us may actually be going down to Houston to protest alongside some atheists there. I think our governor is an embarrassment and a laughingstock, and I think it's absurd that in the 21st century you've got politicians saying, oh, we've got problems we can't solve, so let's get all the governors and people together and pray to Jesus to fix the stuff that I've been elected to fix. For whatever reason, a lot of people don't seem to find that embarrassing. Right now, the Freedom from Religion Foundation's filed a lawsuit. I think that's a mistake. I don't think that this is something that is a clear legal violation, although it should be, because politicians aren't expected to check their religion at the door when they take office. They're still people. They still have those rights. But what they are expected to do is to make sure that there is not explicitly or implicitly a use of their official elected position to promote or endorse religion or to malign other religions or anything else. And so I think as a governor declaring that we're going to, you know, go to Houston and have this huge prayer rally, I think you are coming very close. You've crossed the spirit of the law, even if you haven't crossed the letter of the law. And because they haven't quite, as far as I can tell, crossed the letter of the law, that's why I'm a little concerned that the lawsuit might not be a good idea. But it's definitely just disgusting.
Okay, then. With that, if I can ask just one more quick question.
Sure.
I was watching kind of a recent talk between Richard Dawkins and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you know they were kind of talking about atheism and atheists and how much kind of so-called media attention they get. And, when you talk with pretty much any theist, the most recognizable figure, I guess, is Richard Dawkins. He seems to be, I guess, our so-called main guy to speak out for other atheists. But the thing about him is, he's not so much a spokesman that can really reach, the kind of common man, simply because, more of the topics he talks about, do have to do with biology and evolution. And, he does touch on, bases here and there where he can relate to everyone. But they were more talking about who, we should look to, or who we should, who might be able to take up the reins as that so-called atheist spokesman. Mm-hmm. And interesting, and as far as I can remember, your name actually came up. So
really?
I find you, honestly, out of all the atheists I've kind of heard who speak, publicly, you're the one that can best relate to the common theist.
And you're bringing this up today?
I guess so.
Now, when you say my name came up, it wasn't Dawkins or Neil who brought my name up, was it?
No, it was. Yeah. I think it was in the general discussion.
Sure, yeah.
The general question.
That's because I have legions of fans who run around all over the internet saying, no, you want Matt, which is cool. But
well, yeah, I think I'd have to agree. So I guess my quick question then would be, do you have any plans? Like, what would it take, I guess, for the rest of us atheists to so-called get you into more public view? Because I think you can reach a lot more people
Money.
than anyone else can.
Money.
I take almost every speaking gig that anybody asks me to do. The thing is, in addition to this nonprofit organization and the efforts down here, I also have a full-time job. None of us get paid for this, and by and large, I don't get paid for any of the speaking engagements. Occasionally, I will, but usually it's just they pay to fly me out there, and I speak for free. So I've got to make a living. Well, in Dawkins' case, he's had an entire career and sells tons of books, etc., and then in some cases has really huge speaker fees. So it's kind of about, you got to get the name recognition in order to get the speaker's fees. But the big thing is, it's a terrifying prospect to toss out an actual career that earns me decent money to travel around speaking when I've already got a venue with the show. I'm happy to do any event anybody asks, as long as there's time and a way to work it into schedules. But I don't see anything along the lines of it becoming a full-time career thing.
As am I, and I don't actually have a career at the moment. But
yeah.
I just want to go on the record saying, discussions about who we're going to turn to be the spokesman,
kind of silly,
because it strikes me as extremely silly. We're not a church here, right? I mean, there are going to be people who are better at it than others, and they are naturally going to attract attention. And it seems to me it's covered. Why on earth are we having special, panel discussions about who the next
we don't need
who the next special spokesman should be, the figurehead for atheism? I don't think, who needs that?
Whoever resonates best with the people who are interested, that's who ends up doing it.
Right.
Yep. Anyway, we're about out of time, so I gotta let you go. Appreciate it.
Yep, I appreciate taking my call. You guys.
Thanks, Derek in Denver, how are you?
Hi. Yeah, I had a comment. I believe, first of all, I'm not going to pretend you look beautiful just to conform to atheists. I'm an atheist, but I think you look disgusting.
Okay, you wouldn't be conforming to anybody because I don't think I look beautiful. So what the hell does that have to do with anything?
Oh, all right, but anyway, gender roles are beneficial to heterosexuals.
Didn't we have this call already?
And the world isn't entirely peopled by heterosexuals, so your point's moot.
No.
I mean, I'll agree with you. Gender roles certainly are beneficial to heterosexuals. And there's other people you have to share the planet with. I don't know why this is so hard. Bremer from Kent Islands, Maryland, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Jeff, Madalena?
We're doing great, Bremer.
I have one question, which is a two-part question, if you have enough time.
I'm sure it's on a really easy subject, too, isn't it?
I don't know. It depends on your take on it.
Quickly.
I was just wondering what your perspective is about nature versus nurture debate and how it could tie into morality.
Sure, we can knock that out in 2.5 minutes or so.
Okay.
Actually, if you dig around on the internet, you can look for the superiority of secular morality, which is a lecture that I ran around giving, and that'll at least give you my take on morality. Nature versus nurture, I don't know, are you just talking about that with respect to what?
Oh, I was talking about primarily genetics and being raised in an environment, socio-cultural influences, and personal psychological influences.
Right. With respect to what?
You are.
Yes, obviously people are influenced by their nature and by their nurture. Yes, obviously. And
well,
what is the specific issue?
I was curious because I was reading a book by Steven Pinker, and he was talking about the compatibilist theory of the both, nature versus nurture. But sorry, I'm hearing a feedback on the video on the stream.
Oh, turn your stream down.
I'm actually far away from it on my phone, but I can still hear it.
Okay, I can fix that for you.
Sorry about that. But
so, nature versus nurture is a huge topic that's been debated forever, and it varies. I mean, what do you know, depending on what you're talking about. If you're talking about, for example, somebody's sexual preference, how much of that is nature and how much of it's nurture, we don't know, and it's probably different for each individual person. There are people who may be genetically predisposed towards attracted to being attracted to the opposite sex or the same sex to varying degrees, and there are certainly situations that we know of. For example, otherwise. Heterosexual men in prison engage in activities, and in some cases, people voluntarily or through the course of their lives change what their preferences are due to things, external influences. So the big answer is we don't know, and we certainly can't solve it here in a couple seconds.
And you dropped the word compatibilism, which to me has to do with the question of free will and not with nature versus nurture, so I'm completely lost.
Yeah.
But thanks for your call.
I don't mean compatibilism as in free will versus determinism, or compatibilism as in both combined or coinciding, but I mean compatibilism as in they both are not mutually exclusive. They go together in different aspects.
Yeah, but that's probably true.
The concepts are mutually exclusive. One is one thing and one is
But he means
not. But how
they both affect people to different degrees and different
We're all
issues
affected by all those things
ways.
all the time. And on that note, I got to let you go. Thanks a lot for calling in.
Wow.
We can't solve all the big... Oh, so we got morality today, we got free will today, we got nature versus nurture today, gender identity issues. Like that was to be expected because I'm just amazingly hot right now.
And there's that one guy that insists on calling us every 5 minutes.
Yeah, and you can just stop because everybody here has instructions just to hang up on you when you call in, Charlie. We're done with you. You had your 5 minutes, which is way more than the 15 seconds you should have had.
And you're wrong.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Sweet. So that's it. That's the drag show. Thanks, Jeff, for coming down. Thanks to everybody in the studio audience. Thanks to the people who did my makeup and helped me get ready for this. Thanks to all the people who donated to Camp Quest, the very reason that I'm doing this. In all seriousness, I greatly appreciate it. We had a blast, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.
It's fucking hot up here.
For you, maybe.
Just because I'm